Good morning, Valle. I'm showing my mug because I don't have any photographs, pictures to go with what I'm going to talk about. And the reason I don't have photographs is because the ones I took, I almost regretted taking. It was of the Hurricane Helene that wiped out community after community after community in North Carolina, Western North Carolina, and Eastern Tennessee. Just over a year ago. That took place about 3.5, 4 hours from me where I live. So naturally, I went to help. What was surprising about that experience, I spent maybe a month there or more, maybe 6 weeks. What was surprising about that experience was that there wasn't a lot of compassion around it. People in the western part of the country weren't even hearing much about it. I was checking news sources, and there wasn't a whole lot being reported about what was going on in those places. Yeah, Elon Musk provided Starlink, and eventually communities got hooked up so they could communicate. But we're talking about, imagine 1 minute. By the way, I was watching this live. Evan Freiberger was videoing. He's an independent weather guy. He was videoing the dam as it was breaking. And I was watching in real time the waters rush in and wipe out communities where friends of mine lived. So what are you going to do but go? It was shocking on many levels. One, the infrastructure that you're used to seeing isn't there. And what is there is just mounds and mounds of mud, twisted steel from the railroad tracks that used to be there, things that used to be trees, neighborhoods just gone, piles of rubble that used to be a mobile home park, a neighborhood, houses that used to be beautiful, beautiful neighborhoods. And people walking around stone-faced. I saw almost no crying. It's when you're in acute traumatic stress, you're just in a stunned state. And that's what people were and remained my whole entire time there. There's nobody there to pat people on the back and say it's going to be all right, because it wasn't all right. People's loved ones were in the mud, several feet below where they walked. And they knew this. It wasn't going to be all right. And it wasn't all right. The government had trouble providing support. I'm not going to go into all the details of it. But in the midst of the trauma, then, there were those who were preying on those people, looting, trafficking. Not everybody who people trusted were trustworthy. What arose in that were little communities. And some of them, a lot of them, some of the ones I'm talking about, I'm not going to name them because I don't want to leave anybody out, but there were several churches who stepped up. That's who stepped up. Not the government, not FEMA. FEMA had its hands full of just wild stuff that I'm not even going to go into, partly because who knows what the truth is about it. I sure don't. But who did emerge and over a year later is still there for the people were the churches, several churches. Churches whose buildings were decimated, but the people were still there. They were just there. And what they did, they just functioned. And that's what I noticed when I was there. They just functioned. They just did stuff. And that's all you can do. When you've lost everything, your structure is gone. You don't have your phone anymore. You don't have the internet anymore. You don't have your neighbors anymore. It's gone. The landmarks you thought you had are just wiped away. If you haven't been east, Interstate 40 still is 2 lanes because much of it got wiped out. You can't imagine what I'm talking about if you haven't been in a flood like that. And of course, I wasn't there when it happened, so I cannot even begin to imagine what those people felt, despite, I made my headquarters a coffee shop where people were coming in with deer in the headlights who lost their homes, and it was winter now, and they were living in tents and freezing at night. Some of their children weren't making it. Now I'm telling you all this on Valley Life News so that you understand one of the reasons I'm so attracted to Valley. I know it sounds weird, but y'all don't have those structures to begin with. Y'all, I know that sounds nuts, but most people I've met in Valley are not used to cushy lives. You're okay doing stuff. You're okay working. You're okay. You're out there kind of on your own. And from my perspective after Hurricane Helene, that looks like a safer place to me, where people aren't relying on the government, where people aren't relying on social systems for their very lives. You're independent. And that's how I want to be. Pretty much nobody living in Virginia is independent, completely independent. So anyway, I just wanted to explain that and maybe help you understand why I am so insistent on we need a place for community to gather. Because when or if rough times hit, the people in Valley are going to be the ones who know how to function. And there's not a church that I know of in Valley that'll be that backbone for the people. There's no church at all that I know of. There's no community center that I know of. There are people, strong people, but we need a place to meet and become that strong backbone for the broader community, for what may or may not be ahead for the United States of America.